Hello, this is Carolyn C.J. Jones, and we're here today to talk about search of self. And we had a bit of a discussion before we turned the camera on. And actually we decided perhaps we should just turn the camera on before we start talking among ourselves and catch all of that on film. So we'll start to do that from now on. Anyway, Erlis, you had talked about search of self. You asked me what that meant.
Yes,
to me.
I was trying to differentiate between search of self and awareness. And you pointed out that awareness is looking outside yourself, seeing how you fit into the world. And search of self is looking inside to try to find out what makes you tick, so to speak, and how you can improve it if you figure out what your strong points are and your weak points are and so on. And leads me to something we talked about when we first arrived, and that is anger. Some people go through life being angry and not knowing that they come off this way to people, but everything they observe is anger, anger, anger. And to recognize that in yourself, I think, would be very hard. I don't know whether, but I know people who should. Let's put it that way.
I don't think most people become too introspective until something goes wrong, especially in a relationship. Then they start looking at themselves after they've condemned the other person. They think, well, maybe I had something to do with that.
Temptation is to blame.
Oh, first thing, of
First
course.
thing is to blame someone
else.
Yeah.
That's always the easiest. That's why it's so hard to live alone.
There's no one else to blame.
No one to blame. We can still use the telephone and call. So it's really a self-appraisal that we're looking at too, and to be able to decide what elements are workable or even ones that you really want to work on.
And yes, assuming you want the willingness to want to change.
Yeah.
Or some element of your being you want to change.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you show up for life? She has suggested. Why some people wouldn't want to? Why bother?
That's right.
Easier to ignore.
And there are times where you wouldn't want to change anything, and there are other times you would, and that's when you have to really look at yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And how helpful it can be if you want, or you're willing to change.
The young couple of our friends getting a divorce, he had no idea that she was unhappy. She declared that she had been unhappy, and all of a sudden he had to look at himself and say, no, she's wrong. It's her fault. She doesn't know what she's got good, and so on. And he has, over time, had to do a great deal of self-appraisal to figure this out.
And how has that worked for him? Do you know?
He has admitted now that he is wrong, stubborn and hard-headed, and he is some of the things she said he was, and he is that way, and he thought she accepted him that way.
Ah.
So
Is he willing to change?
it's a shock to find, he has been informed by his wife that it's too late to change.
Oh.
She's out the door.
But you see, she had a hand in that by not speaking out.
That's right. Well, she
Which
thought she
so
was
many
speaking.
young women can't do.
But
She thought she was speaking up, and he would always say, no, you're wrong.
right, I experienced that in my marriage. That I tried to speak up and it got me nowhere.
The other party was not aware.
That's right, Dottie. And not willing to be aware.
Right?
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Because you do, if you're going to change, you have to admit that something has got to change, and it's
Right.
you.
Right, right. And, you know, we're talking about change and wanting to change, and I think change is very difficult for people.
Oh, yes.
Very difficult. But I think when I think of change in myself, it's, I get to that point because I want to be the best that I can. And I think that deep down, most everyone wants to be the best that they can.
That makes sense.
You don't think so?
No.
No? Let's hear about that, Marion.
I just think people kind of go through life, they don't think about being the best they can, except on rare occasion. And then sometimes they look back on their life and they hope they were, but there were plenty of times they could have been better.
You think they realized that at the time when they look back?
When they look back, not necessarily at the time they're doing whatever they're doing.
They took
Right,
the
but-
path of least
Of
resistance.
course, most people do. It's like running down water, running downhill. It's easier.
This is true. This is true.
Very few people are as willing to be aware as you have been, Carolyn.
Wow. Well, thank you, Dottie.
That's
Thank
most
you.
of us just don't think of ourselves so deeply. And you had to.
I did. I had to. I was forced to. And actually, I think I always have been that way.
Really.
Yeah. I just didn't know how to name things. I didn't know how to locate myself. And that's one of the things that for me, doing a self-appraisal has helped with, is I've been able to locate myself. You know, where am I? Who am I?
Who helped you do that?
A couple different friends,
Yeah.
a spiritual advisor, and friends. And a lot of reading. I did a lot of reading. I read like Oriah Mountain Dreamer's work, and I read Neil Donald Walsh, Conversations with God.
How about the 12 steps? Does that help?
Yes, I've heard that that does help.
You didn't
Yeah.
use that yourself, though.
No, no. So do we have any more thoughts about
What were we talking?
search of self,
Search yourself.
self-appraisal? No? Okay. That does it for search of self. Tomorrow we'll be talking about gentleness. We'll see you then.